How's it, Internet? I'm Modlin, and this is the Power Platform Solution Build Along, Episode 2. This episode, we're talking about scoping. Now, I know you probably come to these sorts of things for technical tutorials and the like, but scoping is legitimately the most important part of any solution. If you don't know what you're building, you can't build it correctly. So getting the scoping right is absolutely imperative. We mostly don't have enough time for it or the right access for it, but we can do what we can do. So if we have all the time in the world and we get to do exactly what we want to do, how do I like to do scoping? Well, there are essentially four questions that we need to answer: who, what, why, and how. Starting with the who. Our first point of call is, who are we building this for, right? What company are we working for? Whether we're consulting into a company or we're working inside of a company, what is that company? What do they do? How do they work? What is their corporate culture, right? If they are very formal or if they're very loose and very friendly, that will change how you interact with people during the scoping and during the build. So it's very important to work that out. What industry is this business in? Some industries have a lot more legal requirements than others, and that will definitely impact on the solution that you're going to build. This is also things that you can get before we get into scoping. You can do some research on the business and you can know who they are and what they do. Another big one is, how do they work? What are their ways of work? Do they send emails to each other? Are they using Teams? Do they phone each other? All the different ways of work will impact on how you build the solution and what that final solution looks like. Once we've got this broad-based stuff, then we get into who are the specific people that we're dealing with. The first we always interact with is the project sponsor and the project manager. These can be different people. A project sponsor is usually an executive who has decided that this project needs to happen. They're not going to be very involved because they're busy being an executive. That's where the project manager comes in. The project manager is tasked with making sure that this project gets over the line. They look after the budget, after the timelines, and grease all the right wheels. They also generally have a very good idea of everybody in the business and already pre-built relationships in that business. So they are a vital member of the team when we're building these projects. The next up is the subject matter experts. These are people within the business who are dealing with the specific part of the business that we're building the solution for. Whatever the solution is, they are doing this work now. They are the expert in how this work happens, and we will be getting most of our technical detail from these subject matter experts. Very important, and we need to have time with them. We might have a governance representative. A lot of businesses have very strict governance requirements. And if we can get a representative who knows all of those governance requirements in at an early stage, we can make sure that we're ticking all the right boxes and we're doing everything properly. We should also have an IT representative. We're going to be dealing with IT a lot. We'll need user accounts, we'll need licenses, we'll need their help in a number of different things. So having a clear line of communication into IT is important, and keeping them on board while we're building the solution. We should also talk to an internal communications representative. There might be a department just for internal communications. Often it's just taken up by the HR department. Either way, there is some way that the business communicates to its employees. And when our solution eventually goes live, they are going to be the people that are talking about our solution. So it is very important that they are involved and knows what's going on. And the last, and arguably the most important group of people that we need to talk to are the end users. These are the people that are actually going to be using our solution. So we should ask them what their issues are and what they need out of the solution. Subject matter experts will generally come from this pool, but they will not cover the entire gamut. We want to talk to as many people as we can that are actually going to be using our solution before we build it. Not always possible, but when it is possible, please take advantage of it. The more someone is involved in a project, the more ownership they feel over the final solution. And we want them to feel ownership because then they're actually going to be using it, right? They'll be invested in making sure that the solution is a success. Because we can build the best technical solution, make sure it works 100%. If nobody actually uses it, then that is a failed solution. One way we can avoid that is bringing as many people into the discussions right at the outset as possible so that they have ownership over that process and over the final solution. And that will help adoption. So we've got a whole bunch of people we need to talk to. So please talk to as many as possible and get as much detail as possible. Once we know who we're talking to, we then need to ask them, well, what is it that we're building? What solution are we going to build? And we want to get as much detail, again, as we can, right? That detail includes, what are the data sources? If we're capturing data, what data are we capturing? Where is it going, right? Are we using SQL? Are we using SharePoint? What does that look like? Are we using data from other systems, right? Are we pulling more data in and displaying it to people? Do we need to populate drop-downs from other data sources? What are those data sources? Defining exactly what all those data sources are, who owns them, how we get access to that is very important. Also very important are process definitions. If we're doing process automation, if it's the first time, often there will be no defined processes for those. So it's very important during the scoping phase to sit down and map out exactly what it is that the processes do at each level. Who's responsible for the various actions? How long do they have to do it? Where does it go from there? It is very important to get the process definitions down properly. And then the integration points. Are we feeding into any other line of business systems? Are we pulling data out of other line of business systems? What else is involved in this process? If it's before or after the solution we're building, we still need to know what those are because we may need to integrate into them. Defining all of these different points in as much detail as we can is vitally important. Equally important, though, is why we are doing this. That comes down to primarily two different things. What are the pain points that this solution is going to be addressing? We can get into a situation where we're asked to build a solution without knowing what the underlying pain point is. If that's the case, we can build a perfect solution that doesn't actually cater to the pain point, right? We need to know why it is that we've been asked to do this so that during every step of the process, through scoping, through planning, through build, through deployment, we can keep checking back and make sure that our solution is addressing the pain that the business is feeling. Because that's what's going to make a successful solution. If we put something in place that alleviates a pain point that the business is experiencing. If we're not alleviating it, then it is a failed solution. So we need to know what it is that is causing the pain. What is the why of the solution? And the other one is the expected return on investment. What is the business expecting to get out of the solution? They're putting in a lot of time and effort and capital in order to build this solution. We need to make sure at the end of the day that it is doing what everybody expects. So what is it that they're expecting to get out of it? What is their expected return on investment? We can then, during build, during planning, during deployment, we can check back on these 2 points, make sure that our solution is alleviating the pain that they're expecting and that it is doing what they expect it to do. They're getting that expected return on investment. Only after we've done all of that do we ask ourselves how. We cannot start with the how. First, we need to find out what we're doing, and then we can decide how we're doing it. First one of those is, what platform are we using? You've obviously come to this via Power Platform because that's what I do. But Power Platform is not necessarily the best fit for every occasion. Sometimes at this point in the scoping, you can get to the end of scoping and have a look at the requirements and say, look, Power Platform is not the best fit for this. You can make Power Platform do whatever it is you want, but there might be an off-the-shelf product that will do it better for you and easier. So only once we know what we're doing, Then we can sit down and say, okay, what platform are we using? Yes, Power Platform does fit this. We can use the Office 365 platform. Following on from that is the licensing. Does the business have the required licensing, or will they get the required licensing to get all the functionality that's required? Because we've asked those questions. And then lastly on the how is, what is the project methodology? How does the business work? How do they want us to run this project, right? Are we doing it agile? Are we doing it waterfall? Are we doing it somewhere in between there? And beyond the strictly project management, once the solution is built, how are we deploying that? A lot of businesses will have very strict guidelines. We will have dev, UAT, production. That needs to be built into our project planning, right? That is part of our project methodology. These are all questions that we need to ask during scoping, right? Who are we dealing with? What is it that we're building? Why are we building this? And then how are we going to build it? Only once we have all of this information can we realistically build a solution that will be successful. Having said all of that, for the purposes of this YouTube series, what solution am I going to be building, right? What is our example solution? I've picked something that I think is fairly easy conceptually, but has enough corner cases that it should be interesting in the technical aspects. So what are we building? I'm going to build a support ticket system, right? This could be support tickets for anything. It could be software, right? It could be IT support. It could be hardware. It could be like a manufacturing machines support system, whatever the case is, right? So what is it that we want the support ticket system to do? We want to build a solution to capture and process support tickets. Sounds fairly simple. We need to allow the users to capture as much information as possible. We want to automatically assign tickets to technicians. And we want to allow the technicians to escalate their support tickets. This is a very high-level bullet point list, right? In the real world, you'd have a full business requirements document. I'm not going to build that for the purposes of the YouTube series, but you get where we're coming from. So once we have defined what the system is that we're building, we also need to ask who are the people involved in that. So who are the users that we're going to be deploying this for? These are sometimes called user stories, and it is a great tool to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So who are our users going to be for the solution? Well, we've got the ticket initiators. They can create new tickets, follow the ticket progress, keep an eye on everything. We have the technicians that those tickets are assigned to. They need to be able to see their tickets and to process them. We'll then have team managers. We're going to build this so it'll support multiple teams. So those team managers can see all the tickets related to their team. They can manage the team membership, right? And then we have a support administrator. They can see and manage all the tickets. They can maintain the solution and all the back-end data. These are the admins, right? And those are our user stories. These are the different people that we need to cater for during our build. Scoping can take a lot of time. It is one of the most important things that we will do as solution developers, and we should really, really not skimp on it. We almost always do not have enough time or access, so we need to take as much advantage of what time and access we do have. Please, if you take nothing else away from this video, spend a lot of your effort and your effectiveness and your time in the scoping phase, because it will pay off further down the line. And then my last point on this is, as Adam Savage said, the difference between screwing around and science is writing it down. So while we're doing all of this scoping, while we're having all of these discussions, while we're making all of our plans, it is very, very important that we write it all down and we document everything. And once we've documented it, that entire team of people we talk to need to be able to see that, and they need to sign it off. What that does is it makes sure that everybody involved in the project is on the same page and we're all pulling in the same direction. It'll make everything further down the line much easier. That's not to say that it's not going to change. It will almost certainly change. I think in projects there is always a change that happens. But as long as everybody agrees what the initial set of circumstances was and what we're all working from, when it becomes apparent that something needs to change, it's a lot easier to have that conversation than if we hadn't documented it and we hadn't got that agreement. So, do good scoping, talk to as many people as possible, and write it all down. And that's it for this week. Next time, in our next episode, we are going to be talking about solution design. We're going to do some data schemas, we're going to do some screen wireframes, we're going to decide exactly how it is that we're going to build out this ticketing system. So if you want to find that, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can follow me all over the internet at oddmodlin, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.